morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Hello, it's a delight to be standing here in Tampa Bay. Unfortunately, I'm standing here in Oxford, England, where actually the temperature is about what it normally would be in Tampa Bay. So I feel like I'm there in atmospheric conditions. Anyway,
It is
what a pleasure it is to
92
be here.
degrees.
I think it's 89 here, so we are pretty close. But
Wow.
I don't have air conditioning, so it's
Oh my
kind of
God.
hot.
That's
Yes, because we don't. Yeah, that because pre-climate change, we didn't really have such
terrible.
hot weather. Anyway, right, it's my pleasure to be here. So my name's Andy Cotgreave. I've been at Tableau for some considerable amount of time. I joined back in 2011, having been a customer at the University of Oxford, and now you may know me as the host, one of the hosts of IronViz, author of Big Book of Dashboards. I've just done one of our live shows, Chart Chat, and I do the Sweet Spot newsletter. And I created a QR code, which will be on the next few slides if you want to follow me on any of my channels. This picture, though, is one I took just last week. I got to visit possibly the best village in England. Yes, in southeast England, in Kent, near Ashford, there is a village called Great Chart, which has been on my sort of wish list to go and visit for a while. So we stopped off on the way back from France and took that rather silly photo. Now, pop quiz. I want you to fill something in on chat. What is the Great Chart on my T-shirt? Does anybody know what chart? What chart that is? Pop quiz. This is a great chart. Does anybody know what it is?
I think I need glasses.
Oh, you need glasses. Oh, yeah, right. Okay. Oh, I can't zoom in on it. Well, Matt Lutton has said, is it Napoleon's March? Right. Oh, yeah, I suppose it's, I do a whole thing about presentations, don't I? And how charts need to be small. Napoleon's March, says Matt. Yes, this is the chart that is on my chest. This comes from 1869, and it was a chart showing the folly of Napoleon's 1812 invasion of Russia when he started with an army of 500,000 soldiers, traipsed all the way to Moscow, losing soldiers along the way. No battle was fought, so he had to retreat in the freezing cold winter, losing more and more soldiers on the way, and he limped back to where he started with about 98% of his soldiers killed or captured. The biggest military disaster of all time, captured in this amazing visualization, which I believe you could call a great chart. All right. Now, we have an agenda for today. I'm going to do two things. Hopefully, this is your expectation, Nicole. I'm going to do the first chunk is going to be how to visualize time. We can visualize time in Tableau, so I'm going to talk about that. And then after that, I'm going to show you one of the cool innovations we showed at Tableau conference. So if anybody was there, we're going to talk about gestures and being better data presenters. Nicole,
so they let you keep the high-powered computer?
They have been they have been demanding I return this high-powered computer, Nicole, and I'm like, I need it. So
maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a current active fight. Nicole, just remind me the timings. How? Right, I was going to do this first bit. Time is going to be about 35 to 40 minutes, and then about 15
So we
minutes.
have until one. I scheduled it as a 90-minute block, so you have plenty of time.
Plenty of time. Excellent. Please add questions in chat. Any comments, any questions, put them in chat because I love hearing what you're thinking as you go. Right. The first thing I want to do is an exercise, a little bit of deep thinking and meditation to start your morning in Florida. I want you to think about the present moment in time, wherever you are. Just close. Right. So first of all, everybody close their eyes, and I'm going to, on trust, believe you're doing this. Close your eyes. Think about the present moment. Now, having thought about the present moment, think about tomorrow. Oh, tomorrow. And as you think about tomorrow, put tomorrow in a physical space in some direction emanating from you. So where is tomorrow? And what I want you all to do, whether you're in an office, in a cafe, at home with your family, looking at your dogs or cats, point bravely to where you think tomorrow is. Everybody, point in a direction. Nicole, I can't see you pointing. Yes, I can. There you go. Everyone else is feeling glad they didn't put their cameras on.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So which way did you point? Nicole, what did you do?
I pointed up, but I actually don't think time is a direction.
Okay. Well, let's just come on to that. So I'll ask that question again in a moment. Everyone type in chat. Which way did you point when you were thinking about time progressing? Jack went to the right. Matt went forwards and Norbert went right as well. Interesting. And Nicole went up. Did anybody point in a different direction? Backwards, left, or somewhere else? And tell me in the chat. So, Nicole, why did you point upwards and then think time doesn't have a direction?
Well, since we were asked to point in a direction, I decided that like up was most indicative of like not this moment, like some. But I can see why people said right. It seems like because we read moving right and we visualize time moving to the right. Maybe if we spoke another language, it would be to the left.
Yeah.
I don't know about back, but like physically, I mean, the I'm very philosophical. The present moment is all that really exists right now.
Yes, absolutely. So. Yeah. So right. So most of you pointed right. Nicole is correctly. Once you dig into it, you're like, well, what am I doing here? Most people point forwards in a Western society. We think of falling forwards, moving forwards through time. That's our Western culture. And actually, it's called the sagittal plane. If you point forwards from your own self, that's the sagittal plane, which is named after the sagittal line, which is on your skull. But some cultures do different directions. A bunch of people go right because that's kind of the way that we read in the West, left to right. But around the world, there are cultures that point backwards and in all sorts of directions. So if that's how we think about time, and we all have our own personal experience about time, then what is it? How do we visualize it? Why do we not visualize time moving forwards? Well, we could visualize time moving forwards. You might have remembered, or you might have seen this from the Wall Street Journal from some time ago, and it showed what happened when it's a line chart showing a journey from the Dow Jones around the dot-com bubble. So as you clicked on this video, you are now like on a roller coaster experiencing in VR, because this was an early VR thing, the roller coaster that was the dot-com boom in the late 1990s coming up to 2000. Those of you old enough will remember it was like, hey, if we buy shares, we're going to be rich forever. Hurrah! And, oh, dear. And then the bubble burst and everybody lost their money because it was the dot-com bust. Right? Now, this is fun and funky and interesting, but it's a really tedious way to look at data. We need ways in data visualization to do things more efficiently, and that's why we do line charts. So, given we do line charts, why is it we do line charts? Now, I realize this is a very important question, and I realize some of you are thinking, hey, British guy, that's not how you spell visualize. So I'll give it a dead to concede the transatlantic spelling. How do you visualize time? Well, we've talked about line charts. Clocks are great ways to just do snapshots. This is kind of the existential looking at your phone, thinking, what am I doing with my life? Time is passing by. But you would all say, if I said, how would you visualize time? You would probably say a line chart. Now, the line chart is amazing. This brilliant little mix of slope and position and angle tells us stories about data over time. And hurrah, you should always be doing line charts. But my goal in the next 40 minutes is to convince you that actually the line chart is not always your friend. So when we ask, how should we visualize time? We're going to say it's a little bit more than line charts. Now, hopefully that's got you teased and filled with excitement. I'm going to go into Tableau in a moment, but I just want you to indulge me a little bit of history of timelines. So I have a question. You can type your guess in the answer. In what year was the first chart with a x-axis representing time created? Okay, so there's a whole history of chronology in through humanity. When did somebody first think, oh, if I do an axis with increments, what year would that be? So David says 1700. Any advance or earlier on that from David or from David's?
I was thinking slightly later than that, but
Slightly later, perhaps.
like
Perhaps.
not any later than 1800.
Well, does anybody else want to put in an answer? Maybe not. Okay, 0 says Jack. That's a good guess. It's a fine guess. Well, the answer was 1753, and we are going to go to Jacques Barbe Dubourg, a French philosopher and French philosopher. And what he did in 1753 was create this, the Chronographie Universelle. It's a history of humans, starting from 4000 BC, because obviously that's what they thought then. And at the top of this chart is a uniform x-axis where each increment represents a year of human existence. On the chart is all people of famous note, and when they were sort of when they lived, and some periods here. So it was a chart of the span of humanity, right? What better way than visualize the entire span of humanity? It was cool. Now, he didn't really think about how big his chart would be with this axis representing 4,000 years. And in the end, the chart was 16 meters or 54 foot long. Yes, 54 foot long. So he then realized he had to embed this huge long piece of paper in this funky scrolling device so that you could play with these two little things and wind the line chart from left to right or back to left to right. So he actually created an iPad-style vertical scrolling window way back in 1753. You could even carry this thing around. So he was obviously pre-guessing iPads back then.
Gives me Etch-a-Sketch vibes.
Yes, it's it is. Well, I'll show you another picture of this and why you would not use it to Etch-a-Sketch in 2023. So from 1753, we can go forward to 1765. And we go to Joseph Priestley, who was an incredible polymath. And he had the same idea. I'm going to build the same chart that Dubourg made, but I'm going to fit the axis on my paper. So I'm going to scale the axis down. And on this, he had 4,000 people of note. And then he added horizontal categories for poets and governors and authors and people of different categories of people of note. The other cool thing he did was realize that people are born and they die on different years. So he created a Gantt bar visualization about 150 years before Gantt created a Gantt bar. And he also visualized uncertainty. He didn't know when Pyrrhus was born. So he added dots where the data was uncertain, which is a really good challenge we face today. That was Priestley. And then we get this in 1786. William Playfair, in the Statistical Breviary, produced this, which is kind of viewed as the first modern example of a statistical line chart. He kind of nailed it. It shows imports of England and Denmark and Norway, and it's beautiful, right? It's got a title, it's got nice grid lines, it's got sensible axes, annotations and color, and legends and everything. Hurrah! You might think. Or I certainly thought can you build this in Tableau? Yes, you can. Now, and it takes a bit of hacking around in Tableau to get a sort of stacked area. Of course, in the 21st century, we can add interactivity and you can show tooltips, which Playfair couldn't do. But he kind of got these visualizations right? This is what Playfair did. He realized the line chart was an effective visualization technique, and that's great. The final indulgence I will do is share a picture of me seeing all three of these visualizations. This is the only known remaining instance of Dubourg's scrolling thing. It's extremely fragile. And then we've got Priestley's maps and Playfair's here, and that's me with Steve and RJ Andrews. So that was an incredible privilege to go and see those things. Now,
where is that? Is there like
that was in Princeton,
museum?
in the special collection at
Yep.
Princeton, and where we had a remarkable day with some very enthusiastic archivists, and yeah, it was incredible. So line charts, we kind of stopped thinking. Well, we didn't really stop thinking, but we can go beyond that. So are there other ways of visualizing time? Ooh, that's my teasy question. Who's ready to go to Tableau? I'm sure you all are. Are you ready for Tableau, Nicole?
You know it. Always ready for Tableau.
All right, so here we go. So I'm going to spend, I'm going to show you 6 different chart types that all start off with a line chart. And then I'm going to say why the line chart actually hides insights that different charts can show. I'm going to change data sets a few times, and I'll explain why each time. What I'm not going to do is go into, this isn't a deep tutorial on how to build these. It's more about showing the capabilities of Tableau, but hopefully you'll get some ideas. All right, so 100 meters. Usain Bolt ran it very, very fast in 2009. And the line chart shows just how much he smashed that record, right? We get a steep line, and then a huge drop down here showing that he destroyed that record, right? So it's a really powerful way to show the progression over time. I show this example because the challenge we have here is a sloping line implies that after Jesse Owens set the record in 1936, the record slowly changed until Willie Wilson set his record in 1956. And of course, that's not what happens with this kind of data. What actually happens is that the record stayed at 10.2 seconds from 1936 until that moment in time in 1956 when Willie Williams beat the record, and it goes down here. So what am I doing here? I'm using what's called a step line, and that is a line type you can use in Tableau to do various different things. So when you have a line chart, just change the path, and you can change it from a sloping line to a step line with or without connections. And that is a step line. Really good way of showing time-based data where it changes and then it changes in an instant rather than over time. All right. Chart number 2, a slope chart, one of my favorites. So in this data, I have data about the cycle hire scheme in London. You know, where you hire a bike from one docking station and take it to another docking station. These days, there's fewer docking stations, but this is what this data is from.
We would call it bike share, like Coast Bike Share in Tampa.
Right. Yeah, perfect. So bike share. In fact, I would call it bike share. I should have called it that too. What I have here is the number of journeys for 8 of the station names in London over a one-year period, right? And the line chart is really interesting. You can see that for 2 of the stations, there was a big spike in the middle of the year, or quite a big plateau in the middle of the year, whereas the other 6 kind of hung around, or just kind of didn't really see much of a rise in the middle of the year. So the line chart's good. But the question at the top says, what's the difference between the start and the end of our data? All right. Interesting question. So if that's the question, do I need any of this data? I've now selected everything that isn't the start and the end month, and I can just exclude all of it and get what is called a slope chart. So a slope chart just shows you the start and end of data set, and it really helps you focus on things that have changed without all the noise in the middle of the data set. And if that's important, and if that's what you want to focus on, a slope chart is a really powerful way of getting rid of the noise. I can be pretty sure that none of you had noticed that Albert Gate had gone from being ranked 8 to being ranked number 1 over this time period. If I undo and leave Albert Gate highlighted, you still can really not see that trend from number 8 to number 1. So slope charts are really good if you want to focus on the start and end and you don't want that noise in the middle. A bump chart is also a good way of looking at rank, but I haven't got time to show you that today. You can do dynamic slope charts as well. What I just showed you was me ad hoc grabbing data and excluding a bunch of stuff. But this is an example using a table calculation where you can change the filters and it will always just show you the start and the end of the data. Again, I've got a blog on that, which is we've got links to share with you later. All right. So slope charts, if you want to see the start and end of a data set. Nicole, have you ever used a slope chart?
Indeed, I have.
Excellent. Excellent. Right. Same data set, different chart, different question. What I've done here now is plot the 7 days of the week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, etc. And the line chart represents the number of journeys in London by hour of the day within each of those days of the week. Interesting patterns you can see. Sunday, things are kind of focused around 3 o'clock. And then on the weekdays, you get this commuting peaks where lots of people are cycling at 8 p.m. and at 5 p.m. So you get a commuting peak, which you don't see in the weekends. All right. But my question, which might be the questions you have, is what do the hours of 8 a.m. or noon look like? Or if this was different time aggregations, I just want to compare January and December over multiple years. Well, to answer that question on a line chart like this, I could look at 8 a.m. and I could find noon, and then I'd have to find noon here, and then I'd have to find noon about here, and it's not obvious, right? So to answer that question, we can create what is called a cycle plot. And what are we doing here? Well, the great thing about Tableau is the way it breaks down discrete time dimensions into different pieces. And most charts, you would have a big slice like weekday, and then a smaller slice, day, hour, minute, second. Well, if you invert those, so I'm going to put the big chunk of time to the right of the small chunk of time, we now get what is called a cycle plot. What do the hours of 8 and noon look like? They look like this. The line, each dot within the pane represents one of the days in a week. So, sorry, let me just do 8 and 12. So the hours of 8 a.m. and noon look like this kind of N pattern. You get more cyclists at 8 o'clock, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whereas noon has this U pattern. Lots of riders at noon on a Sunday, fewer riders during the week, and then another peak on Saturday. I do love wondering who are these people riding these bike share bikes at 2, 2, 3 a.m. Probably don't want to know, and I don't want to know how sober they were. So this is called a cycle plot. It's a really cool way of looking at cyclical trends in your time data. By necessity, a cycle plot kind of takes quite a lot of real estate. So that could be a problem if you're trying to build these on dashboards. But they are cool ways of looking at trends in data. Now, why do I use an area chart and put Sunday and Saturday at different ends of this pane? Not for analytical reasons, but purely because it makes these hours look like Batman. And anytime I can get a DC superhero or Marvel superhero into my visualizations, I count that as a win. So there you go. Anyway, the cycle plots, these are really awesome ways of doing things. You could just draw a line chart for each day of the week. So here I've got the 24-hour period. Red is the weekends, and the sort of gray is weekdays. All right. So seasonality is a really important thing to try. Now, I'm going to switch data set to, unfortunately, not a pleasant data set. But this data set gives us an opportunity to show some really interesting trends and different visual types. So this is fatalities on the roads in the US. Here, the line chart is quite powerful, I believe. The peak of fatalities was in 2005. 43,000 people died on the roads. Things dropped down, but actually, tragically, in the US, fatalities are going up, and they've gone up. They've gone up significantly in the last 2 years as well. They haven't released the actual full data set yet, but fatalities are going up significantly on US roads. So I think this line chart is really powerful. One thing I did here was I didn't truncate the y-axis because I wanted to convey this message that, you know, we're quite high up on my page, on my screen here, because this represents a lot of lives lost.
Yeah, even the smallest data point is high up there.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, with a line chart, you can. It's valid to truncate a y-axis with a line chart, and what that does is emphasize the relative change rather than the absolute change. So by taking the zero axis out, it emphasizes this change. But if you're only glancing at this chart, it's easy to think, oh, fatalities were really low here.
Yeah, it looks like a huge drop.
Yeah, no, they weren't. They were really, really high. So, yeah, so there was a 14% increase. Incidentally, this changes when you normalize this over miles driven or hours spent in car. That increase is real over many different metrics.
Driving in the state of Florida, I'm sure it goes up.
We'll look at that in a minute, actually. Now, the question is, what are the seasonal trends? So I just showed you a cycle plot. Let's build a cycle plot. I'm going to drill into year. I'm going to change this to month. And let's build the cycle plot. I'll take year and put it on the right-hand side of the smaller time slice, month. So this is structurally exactly the same chart that looked cool and insightful and like Batman with the bike share scheme. With this data, it doesn't look very interesting. And that's because the longer term trend is much stronger than any trends within each month, right? So when we're exploring our time-based data, the goal is to find the best articulation of the data, and the data itself will lead you to the best chart for that purpose. So in this case, this cycle plot doesn't really work. You will see the words highlight table here because we can do something pretty cool instead. I can create a highlight table. So I'm going to put year on rows and then drop fatalities onto color. Oh, what? An error? What? What? That's weird. I've never seen. Well, there you go. I guess I won't do that. Huh. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the one I have already finished. Right, there you go. I don't know why. I've never seen that error before. And let's go to month. There's something strange there. Okay, well, what I've done here, I don't know what happened there. Sorry, everybody. But what I've done here is change this to a highlight table. And I've actually changed it now to show me the one rectangle for every calendar day of the year. I should be able to change this to year. Right, there you go. Okay, so this is where I was trying to get to. This is the fatalities for every month going across the top and every year going down the side. And so we can see where the fatalities really get intense around 2002. We can see they dropped off, and it was the drop off was in the winter, and then we can see the rise in more recent years. The power of highlight tables is that we can change the levels of aggregation. And so what we've got now is one rectangle for every day, calendar day of the year. And we can answer the question, for example, on what day are there the most fatalities on roads in the US? I'm just going to change that to 100. No, 300. Now, I think there's some really interesting insight in this data set. The day on which there are the most fatalities in the US are, perhaps unsurprisingly, Independence Day and New Year's Day. All right. Now, I haven't normalized this for miles driven on those days, so it could just be that there's more people on the roads. But I think this is highlight tables are great ways of showing time-based data because it's very easy for us to look left and down. Now, how many of you are trying to bring data visualization into your organizations and your senior leaders say, I just want the data. Just give me the Excel table. And you're sitting there going, but charts, data viz, it's beautiful. I love my charts. Please, why can't I give you charts? And they go, no, I just want the table. If that represents your experience, then highlight tables are a great way of giving people this gateway into data visualization. Because if you add text to the table as well as the color, then you are giving them the table, but also saying to the person, but I am using color to draw your attention to the numbers that are most important. In this case, the highest numbers, but it might not be the one. That might be a stepping stone to going from Excel table to highlight table to more powerful aggregated visualizations and God forbid, interactive dashboards. Amazing. That would be the goal. You can, once you've got them on the first step, you can go a little bit further and enhance this tooltip. All right, this tooltip's fantastic, but what if we could whack more information in there? Well, you may be familiar with this feature. If you're not, you can add whole worksheets into tooltips. So let's get rid of the text. So what I'm doing here is selecting a sheet I've already prepared, and we're going to see that as a tooltip. And now I can see that on July the 4th, the fatalities start high in the middle of the night, but then peak towards the end of the day. So the highest fatalities per hour on July the 4th is between 11 and midnight. Contrast that with January the 1st, and perhaps unsurprisingly, it's between 1 and 4 a.m. where most of the fatalities are happening. So fascinating data, but also a really powerful way of trying to get your organization on this path of breaking out of reliance on tables. Give them color-coded tables, give them tooltips with more information, give them ways to click through to the next level of insight. So, Nicole, that is not pleasant data, I acknowledge. So we're going to look at another highlight table, which is happy data. I've got highlight tables for the USA and for the England and Wales based on birthdays. So question for you, Nicole, and then for everybody attending. So, Nicole, when is your birthday?
May 30th.
May the 30th. And I assume, well, I'm going to assume you were born it. So May the 30th is not a very common birthday. You are the 328th most common birthday. Does that echo your lived experience? Do you feel like it's an unusual time?
I feel like I know a lot of Geminis, like people who were born in like this period of 4 weeks or whatever, which is not backed by data at all. Yep. Let's just be clear. But maybe we're attracted to each other's personalities. Who knows? But I saw this data at some point, and it's very interesting to me.
It's
not like so is it normal distribution. Well, I mean, it sort of is, but not really.
Oh no, it's very, very not normally distributed. So, is it anybody's birthday this week? So I've got 3 questions. Is it anybody's birthday this week? Is it anybody's birthday in September? In which case, which day? And does anybody think they have an unusual birthday? So, Neza, September the 16th. Let's have a look. In fact, that literally could not have gone better.
Neza, did he contact you and be like, come on this meeting and say?
That is amazing. The most common, I don't know if you were born in the USA, but that is number 1, right? Now, let me show you something interesting. Yes. So, Beth, you have an idea. I'm in the UK. The second most common day is the 20th of September, and ranked number 1 is the 26th of September. So if that doesn't give you an idea of what the British people do on Christmas, then, well, hopefully, well, maybe it does, right? But there you go, right? This is not, humans don't just procreate with any
it's time
trend.
We're in our quartile.
So, but there's amazing other trends in here. In the UK, 31st of December is 120th. So New Year's Eve is kind of in the middle of popularity. Just 24 hours after this, it's the 1st of January. Whoop. And look at that. The 1st of January is 364. It's extremely uncommon to be born on the 1st of January. And this shows just how managed birth has become as a process. You can see across the US, the 13th does not have, there's a band of people not wanting to give birth to their kids on the 13th. There's a spike in the USA on the 14th of February. You've got not many people getting birth on Independence Day. So I think this birth data, I think, is fascinating, right? And Neza, I'm delighted to have met you because nobody else. That's the first time I've ever had a 16th of September hit. So that's made my day. But in the last 20 years, I think which isn't really obvious here, but even the 9th of September had a big drop in kids being born on the 9th of September for about 10, 15 years. So cool data, right? The reason before I started, I said I was going to show you a line chart for every data set. Here is the line chart for live births in England and Wales for the year in which I have data, 2014. And on first look, you're like, my God, Andy, this line chart is garbage. And it is really hard to look at. But what you're actually seeing here is all of these. So this is births in England and Wales for every calendar day in 2014. What you're seeing here is weekends. There are fewer births on Saturdays and Sundays in England and Wales. So the line chart is actually giving you insights. All right, I'm going to rush because I'm going to speed up a little bit because I have got 2 more charts to show you. Well, climate change is upon us. I tried to update this data a couple of weeks ago, but I got a bit stuck in the weeds. This is showing drought index, the severity of drought across the USA. And you can see there was severe drought in 2012. And this is the highlight table we looked at earlier. But we can put a little chart in each one of these matrices. So if you haven't seen a small multiple before, then let's stick one inside the map. Latitude and longitude. And I'm going to put state on detail. And there you go. I've got a small multiple map, which here's one I created earlier. So what you can still see is the severity of the drought in 2012, lots of red. But now I can see that actually that drought wasn't so bad in the northwest of the US. And then years when the drought was quite easy, or it was quite low, there was actually still parts of the US with a severe drought. This is the sort of the next step of highlight tables, really powerful ways to pack loads of encoded information in a very small space. So I recommend you look at those small multiples. But I also want you to take away that you need to be driven by the data. This is a map of fatalities on the roads in the US. If I draw a small multiple of this, if I draw the same data set, so day and month, this is what the small multiple with fatalities looks like. And guess what? It's actually a very interesting chart because it just shows that every single month there are more fatalities in California, Texas, and Florida. But this is not the type of chart you would build on a dashboard because there's no interesting trend at the month level, right? This is the same structural chart as the drought index, but it's the data isn't interesting. So the data will inform what the best chart is that you need to build. All right, last chart, and then we'll wrap up, take some questions, and I'll show you something cool in Tableau, or some cool prototypes. This data set shows video views by day from YouTube back when they used to do this data. So this is data from 2016 up to 2016, and it was the 10 most popular YouTube videos at the time. In the interest of time, I'm not going to show you how to build this chart, but my question here is, which one of these hit 1 billion views first? Well, to answer that, the problem we have is that each one of these videos was released on a different date. So trying to compare Bailando by Enrique with Gangnam Style by Psy is really hard. The line chart is great. We can see Gangnam Style knocked things out of the park in 2012. And then Adele was just ludicrously high view count in 2015. But we can't see who hit 1 billion views first. For that, we would need to build an index chart. And again, Google is your friend here. And we can see that Adele hit 1 billion views after just 89 days. The difference of this chart, the difference here to build this chart is we've taken the x-axis, and instead of showing time over time, we're using an index to show the number of days since the video was released. And index charts are really powerful if you want to compare things that happened at different times, but starting from when they first happened. If you're following any of the climate data news at the moment, you're seeing lots of index charts as they go. 2023 ocean temperature is high, ice extent is low. There's temperature anomalies happening across the world, and there's index charts being used all over the place to really convey that message. So index charts are super powerful. Whew, right. Hopefully some of you have some questions, because I'm going to pause to take questions in a moment before moving on to our next step. Before I do, here are the 3 lessons hopefully you've taken from this. First of all, first lesson is line charts are amazing, but they hide insights that other charts can reveal. Slope, cycle, highlight table, small multiple, index charts, really good things to have in your arsenal. Secondly, when choosing the right chart for your data, the data itself will lead you to the right path. Cycle height, the bike share data makes a great cycle plot, whereas the fatalities data doesn't. The drought index makes a great small multiple, but the fatalities data doesn't, because the trends of cyclical nature are different within each data set. So you have to iterate and find the best chart. This is a really insightful chart as part of your analytical journey. It teaches you something about fatalities, but it then isn't something you would put on a monitoring dashboard. Finally, we now have academic support, tools like Tableau and all the other BI tools let us automate all of this stuff and create charts with barely a moment's thought. And yet every time you're doing these things, you're standing on the shoulders of these incredible pioneers who intuited their way towards how data could be visualized. And, we now have this 250-year history of development of this field that continues apace. So stand on the shoulder of giants. So yes, reflections. I'm happy to take questions. And for now, I'm going to pause and answer questions. Well, on screen, just before I go into questions, there are many books that are great. These are 5 books I think are incredible jumpstarts to your career as a data storyteller. None of these are about Tableau. That's a different set of books.
Robert, I'm taking a class with Robert Kosara right now, who's
cool.
If y'all don't know, he's kind of a big deal in the data visualization world. I'm taking it on Observable, so it's like tool agnostic, and these are the exact books that he has on the list. The exact books.
Well, that's amazing. That's great. Okay, so I'm seeing some questions. David, Chris, I can't actually share the workbook because David asks, can I share the workbook? I'll share a link. I'll put a link in the chat with links to blog posts on all of these. The problem I have, some of that data I can't share. The bike share data I can't share, so I can't actually share the workbook. But
I have a bike share data set from Tampa, David, if you want to visualize it.
Yeah. I'm just going to try and find a link to, but I will put a link where I write a whole bunch of blog posts on each of these tips. So that should be a way to find it, but I'm struggling to find.
Why don't you send it to me and I'll put it in our LinkedIn group
I've found it. Right. So yes, but also put it in the LinkedIn group. Right. There you go. Okay. Who's the next question? What do I think of radial or starburst charts to show time, year, month, hour, etc.? So Nazza, that's a great question. Radial charts are aesthetically pleasing. They're visually compelling. And if the data is cyclical, like calendar of a year or hours in a day or months, then they actually also make logical sense.
Like that COVID-19 spiral visualization.
Yeah. No,
Oh.
not like the COVID spike, because that.
Oh, well, that was cumulative over time.
Yeah, I
Anyway, never
right.
mind.
I'll finish my question, my answer, and then I'm going to show. I'm going to address that because it's a really. Oh, I can't do it on this laptop, but that's a really interesting question. If your goal is to allow people to compare any instance accurately with any other instance on that around that circle in the radial chart, then it's not easy. So you are sacrificing the ability to compare across the series of data at the altar of aesthetics. And I am not going to tell you that's a wrong decision. You know, aesthetics in the right circumstance can be the right choice, but you've got to be careful not to obfuscate if your goal is accurate interpretation of the data. John says, do I have any chart recommendations for showing duration, e.g. time it took for a police fire response? Well, duration can be good for a Gantt chart is a good way of doing that. I mean, I actually think a bar chart could work, John. I'd probably have to know a little bit more context about where you're trying to show it, because duration is a length, and if you were comparing a whole bunch of things, then they could all start at 0 and just be compared. But a Gantt chart would let you see them in situ of when each one started. Nithin says, I more often run out of ideas with colors than chart types. Nithin, that is a great question. Color is outside of the scope of what I could probably talk about today. I mean, color is a whole other topic, right? Here, I've got a categorical color palette because each one of these is a distinct, discrete item. There are 10 different colors, which is about the limit of colors we can visually cope with and visually name. So beyond this, categorical palettes can be a challenge. Nothing beyond that. My recommendation is Google around for color in data viz. I think Kate Stracciani just wrote a book about color in data viz, something we cover in the big book of dashboards, and it's covered a lot in blogs and books on the field.
And I've collated a bunch of resources around color. I put a link in the chat.
Oh, cool. Excellent. Any other questions?
What about
or reflections? What do people think? What line charts have other people used?
He knew I was going to say, what about
anything, Nicole?
What about connected scatter plots? I've been struggling with this lately because they're effective when you know how to read them. And I think my challenge is, even though I know my audience, I want to give some kind of like how to read this chart, which is much easier on other chart types than this.
Yeah. So a connected scatter plot. What is a connected scatter plot for those that might not know? This is probably the most well-known one. This comes from the New York Times. My God, it's 10 years. It's from 2012. Holy cow, we've been in this field a while. In a connected scatter plot, the axes, you've got two measures, one measure on the X, one measure on Y, and then you're plotting each year, in this case, along those two axes. So the timeline starts here in 1950. Here we're looking at vehicle miles and vehicle fatalities. So basically, the two things correlate like this over time, and fatalities go down as miles driven goes up. And there's actually some really interesting stories. As Nicole says, a connected scatter plot requires a significant investment in your reader's time to have any idea what the heck is going on in this chart. If none of you have seen this scatter plot of this chart before, even after looking at it for a minute or minute and a half, I suspect you've still not worked out what's going on. Once you unlock what this thing is telling you, it's incredibly powerful. It's a really good way of visualizing data. if you have an audience that is willing to invest about 5 minutes of poring over this chart to go, huh, what's going on? Many people would argue that a simple timeline with 2 lines on it, one for each measure, would actually show the data easier or quicker. So use with care.
There's
But when
something
you
about the
use it,
journey, though, that I
yeah,
think adds a
yeah,
richness to the story. Anyway.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So 1973. So the story here is really interesting. Miles driven had gotten really high because we were over here, and then there was the oil crisis. So people slowly started driving less, but fatalities really plummeted at the same time. So there was the drop in mileage wasn't so much, but the significance of fatalities was. And that's the reason why, because Nixon imposed a speed limit. So what happened is people didn't stop driving, but they slowed down. And guess what? When you slow the cars down, people don't die as much. One of the core reasons fatalities on the roads are going up in the US is deemed to be that speeding has become almost a norm on American roads. That it's not seen as a taboo. In this country, speeding is seen much more as a taboo than in the US. It's just, speeding is just like, oh, I got a ticket. But speeding, faster vehicles kill more people. So I'll get off my political.
Here, especially, I mean, Florida. I wasn't kidding. Like, people drive. I can't believe it sometimes. What happens on the road?
Yes, yes, and unfortunately, the data does reflect that. You need to believe it. David has a long thing. Would I ask my leadership to provide a website dedicated to helping both novice and experienced Tableau users with understanding how to use Tableau if you're stuck on the problem? Right. David, drop me a line on LinkedIn and I'll pass on your feedback. We try to give me a little bit more context of what you're asking, because we try to do that, but given you've given the question, I'm guessing it hasn't worked for you. So I apologize for that, and we will try to get better. Right. Oh, you don't use LinkedIn, other options.
Twitter?
Send an email to Nicole. And Nicole.
Yeah, there you go. Send me an email.
Yeah. Right. Any other comments on time, or should we move on to something completely different? Let's move on to something completely different.
That was a great presentation. I really loved it.
Thank you. Right. Should we take just a moment of calm, and I'll now reflect. In fact, Nicole, can I just ask you to, yes, and now for something completely different. And actually, Nicole, I need to ask, can you just talk amongst yourself for a moment, Nicole, while I try and set up the next thing?
Yes, absolutely. We definitely can do that. On the topic of visualizing time, I have some good data sets, and I can put those together and drop those into the LinkedIn group, which I should probably, I have a link in there in my Gamma slides that did not work today, but I will.
Oh, by the way, sorry, I'm just going to stop my video, but I'm still here, but I'm just going to turn off my video.
Yeah, no problem.
Right, carry on.
Let's see. What did what, Nathan, what is punctuated bar charts? What do you mean? Although it's, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure what a punctuated bar chart is.
Maybe I'll Google it, because that's one thing we need in the field of data visualization is maybe a more standard vocabulary. But
yeah, that would be nice.
We'll get there. Oh, it looks
right.
Looks like a side-by-side bar chart to me, but
okay. Side-by-side bar charts. I really struggle with side-by-side bar charts.
Do too.
I think Tableau, I don't think Tableau implements them very well. I think they actually look better in Excel and Power BI because they're padded more interestingly.
Yeah, and there
find a
aren't as
live chart
many.
generally.
For all the customization options we have in Tableau, I don't feel like there are enough in that particular kind of chart.
No. Right. Should we move on? I'm ready to do the next section. So, okay, my webcam is not on in the user group because it's going to be used elsewhere. All right. Anybody who's seen me present or has followed me on social media for the last 5 or 6 years will know that I have issues with the way the data is presented. And in fact, even at the start of this, in that picture of me with the t-shirt, somebody said, "Oh, that chart's a bit small," for which I died a little inside. I care about how we present data. How many of you have sat in a meeting where somebody does something stupid on PowerPoint and then says these words, "Oh, sorry, it looked a bit bigger on my laptop, but it's okay. As you can see, whatever region you're in, you've got a big target next year. Look at this one here in Germany. You've got a bigger target than Luxembourg over here," right? Is that familiar? Because that's what drove me nuts over many, many years. People putting charts on the screen that didn't make sense. They were too small. They were too complicated. And then they'd stand miles away and point at them, assuming that some figure in the distant part of the room pointing at a screen would make me understand where the heck they were pointing at. Drove me crazy. I still feel, Nicole, like I'm unloading a whole career's worth of pent up stress and anguish over this. Well,
it still is a problem, though.
It still is a problem.
Just like we try to build charts with a mobile experience in mind, we need to build charts with an audience in mind that's sitting far away.
Yeah. And if you are putting charts on a screen or in a presenting data, then your goal is to share insight and persuade others to make decisions. Yeah. And therefore, why would you not do the best you possibly can in that endeavor? The greatest person, well, maybe not. No, the GOAT, I think it's fair to say, was Hans Rosling. There are data storytellers around now who I think are absolutely exceptional as well. But Hans Rosling was a Swedish physician who in 2006 did a TED Talk, which we're not going to look at now. But I highly recommend you go and check this out because he brought data to life in a way that blew the data storytelling world apart. Right? It was just mind-bending what he did. We were very lucky to have him present at Tableau conference twice in 2013. I mean, even just look at this prop. He came along with a 3-meter long pointing stick because he recognized that you need to draw attention to the part of the screen that you're showing at any given time. He recognized the power of drama, humor, and infusing himself with the data. That's not always practical, right? Is it? It's not. We can't all just take along a 3-meter long stick to every presentation we do. But here's the thing I've been saying for a long, long time is, do you think you can be like Hans Rosling? Well, even with a kind of crappy chart like this, if you get in front of the data and point at it and bring it to life, then yes, you can be a bit like Hans Rosling. And that is my challenge to you all. Whenever you present data, think a bit more like Hans and get involved in it and bring it to life and touch the screen that people touch the bit of the screen that people need to look at. I'm not going to go into that any longer in any more detail in terms of my tips and tricks about presenting data, because we showed something at Tableau conference that made me very, very, very excited. Right. Yes, here I am. Right. So here we go. So I've just realized my camera is on that screen and my face is on that screen. So hang on a minute. I'm just going to do this one quick change. Bear with me. I need to get this on a different screen so I can look at the camera and look at you and the data again. Right, there we go. So what if we could all be like Hans Rosling? Well, what I'm going to show you now is something we showed at Tableau. All right, at Tableau conference. So, hang on. One last change. Yeah, there you go. Right, okay. What if I could be a bit like Hans Rosling? Well, what if I could touch and play with my data and infuse myself in the data at the same time? Well, there's a sparkle over there in the top right, and if I touch it, I have data. And in fact, what I've got here is data about the Netherlands and flood risk in the provinces and my employees and colleagues who work there. So let's take province and drop it on this zone here. Well, here are all the Dutch provinces, but not so much interest without a measure. So let's look at it by population. And now we drop it on here and we get a sorted bar chart showing the different population levels in the Netherlands. And in fact, the range goes from about 3.9 million and down to the smallest province, which is about just 400,000. So there's a big spread of population. As in any country, it's very uneven. What about flood risk in the Netherlands? Well, let's change the bar chart so that it's sorted by flood risk. We'll drop that on the zone as well. And now the bar chart changes its sort order, and we begin to see some of the discrepancies between flood risk. The orange bar shows the percent of that population that is at risk of severe flooding. In North Holland, big population of 209,000, but only 10% of the population, according to our data, is at risk of severe flooding. Contrast that with South Holland, where the biggest province in the Netherlands, and actually 43% of those people are at risk of flooding. So we're beginning to see this distribution of province and flood risk across the nation. Now, I'll confess that before doing this demo, I was probably like most of you and not quite an expert on exactly where all these provinces are. So you might think, well, let's look at this geographically. We'll drop it on this zone, and now we get a map of all the provinces, and everything is automatically connected together. I can take my employees and show me a choropleth, a field map about where my colleagues are, and we can talk about that flood risk. And you can see that actually most colleagues are here in North Holland. There's some in South Holland, and most of the other provinces actually have very, very few employees at all. And this allows me to, sort of convey the final conclusion. In North Holland, most of my employees are here, but the flood risk, fortunately for my colleagues, is quite low. South Holland, contrast that, is another highly populous province, but the flood risk is much more significant there. So by chance or by design, our colleagues aren't at serious risk of flooding. And this is how we think we can be presenting data in the future. This is what we call Tableau gestures. It's the message and the messenger combined in one screen. You don't need an Apple Vision Pro at $3,500 for this. You won't need any plastic hats. This is commodity webcam and an off-the-shelf laptop. It's quite a powerful laptop for me to do this. But we think this is a really exciting way to be thinking about data. We've shown this. It's a research prototype at the moment. It caused big waves at TC and at Gartner since then. So we're going to be continuing the research project. And hopefully, like for you, it's done what it did to me, and it blew my mind, because everything that I've been banging on about presenting for the last 5 years might be solved by this. Wow.
Like,
so how cool is that?
No matter how good of a verbal communicator you are, the like touching the thing and showing the thing,
yes,
there are not words that are equivalent.
It's totally right? The thing that Hans Rosling showed is that to be a great data presenter, you have to have the skills of using words, using drama, using pauses, as well as getting gestures right. There's huge amounts of research in how gestures work. Matt Bramer, who's been leading the research project that we're looking at right now, he spent years and years, or the last 3 years working on this. And with him, we did a whole bunch of stuff looking at how gestures are used and, what kind of ways people bring data to and from data presentations when they do it. And it is incumbent on anybody who cares about telling data stories to be great presenters, because data comes to life when you put the effort in to presenting it incredibly well. So let me take some questions or comments on that. I'm going to have to look over here for comments. I'm seeing thumbs up and amazing. David asks, are there undo and customization options available? So This is what you're looking at now is a research prototype. This is about the 5th iteration that Matt Bramer has worked on. And we put a lot of effort into getting this prototype working for Tableau Conference and for the Gartner Bake Off. The reaction was immensely positive. We are now in the process of going, people really like this. And there are people who want to present data better. So we're now investing in trying to take this to the first iteration of a product. I'm involved in that, but I can say nothing about dates, roadmaps, or anything. So the answer to the question is...
Especially not on a recording.
Especially not on a recording. So are there undo and customize options available? I mean, David, I'm extremely excited to be part of this project because we're playing around, thinking about ideas, really digging into all the ways this could go from being this funky prototype to actually a product. If you look at if you go and watch Devs on Stage from TC, we showed a different demo. And there is a blog post. Again, I'll make sure Nicole gets a link to the blog post.
I know which one you're talking about, in fact.
Yeah, that's Matt's research, which shows much more background about what we're thinking and where we might go with this. So, any other comments or questions? It's quite strange being like my webcam is a shared screen. I feel like somehow disconnected from a normal virtual meeting experience, and that you'll see my face.
It is a little weird.
Shut up and take my money.
Totally,
yes.
Honestly, I'm the biggest critic, and that blows me away.
Now, it's really interesting, right? So Nicole, you're loving it. Oleg, you're loving it. There's positivity here. We do get some people who are going, well, I'd never use this. I'm not a data presenter. And it's like, or even I'm not a data presenter, so this is not an interesting feature. And it's like, yes, fine, right? Not everybody. Here's everybody in the world.
Yeah,
here's the amount of people that might care about presenting data.
Yeah, like you might be making a chart for a newspaper, and it's on paper, and I can't use interactivity. That doesn't mean I don't want interactivity.
Yeah. Right. So David says if we could record creating a visualization and have the option to send that recording to people, it would be equally awesome. That's totally right. We thought about the first. Matt's idea was just about bringing data to life in Zoom, right? The research started at the start of the pandemic, or his research started at the start of lockdown. But imagine receiving a video with all this data instead of a presentation, right? It'd be more compelling. Oops, I've got to stand a bit further back.
Instead of ever seeing another PowerPoint again.
Yeah, right. You just bring it to life. And imagine if this was sales data, and or Tableau user groups. I could be like, look at Tampa Bay, 3.9 million users. That one down in Fort Lauderdale, only 400,000 users. You guys in Tampa Bay are smashing it.
This data has me thinking about our own flood risk. I saw there's some new data about flood zones in Florida.
Yeah.
Of course, we're all going to be underwater at some point.
Well, yeah, Miami's in trouble, right?
It really is.
John says great for data journalism. I think leaders trying to communicate data to stakeholders, I think would be very good. One interesting challenge we're already coming across, and we did a big lab at TC and got loads of feedback. Now, the research all started with Matt Bramer thinking, how do people gesture when they do data presentations? And then a bunch of people said, well, I'm quite nervous about doing all of this. Can you not just give me a clicker and let it progress sort of slide by slide? And on one level, that's incredibly powerful, but to what extent do we want to create a PowerPoint step-by-step experience compared to the power that I have when I actually touch and drag and add things? When I add something to the visualization, you're what I'm
in
doing.
The story. You're literally telling the story.
Exactly.
And you're not just operating the machine that tells the story.
Exactly. All right. Any more questions? If not, I will leave you with some resources and ways to follow me. Oh, hang on. Now I've lost you. Where are you? There you are. Oh, no, I can't do that. Let's leave the resources. Oh, no, I'm not. Oh, no, I know why. I'm sharing the wrong screen. Right. Okay. Forget it. You're just going to have my. Nicole will send you a link.
I always put links to what the stuff the presenters talked about in the Gamma slides, and I post those in the LinkedIn group. So I will do that as usual.
All right. There you go. That's. I tried using. Has anybody seen the AI generators that turn QR codes into pieces of art? I don't know if anyone's seen that on doing the rounds, but you can put a QR code into a mid-journey connected app, and it will take your QR code and make it into whatever you want. But I tried it, and the QR code didn't work. And in fact, I tried all the ones that were in that Discord channel, and none of them actually work. So it's like it's a really cool app, but it doesn't make functional QR codes. All right, they did, or it didn't work on my phone anyway.
AI is best for regular expressions.
Yes, and level of detail calcs. I've actually discovered
both of those things.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for being here.
All right.
Andy.
Well,
so great.
My absolute pleasure. I recognize some names amongst the participants, so great to see some old friends. But if you're new to this field, new to Tableau, welcome aboard. It's changed my life since I was a customer in 2007, and hopefully it'll change yours.
And we'll have the recording on the YouTube channel in a couple of days. Our Tableau user group has joined up with a bunch of other Tableau user groups to have the Data Fam Tableau channel, because Tableau doesn't have all of the user group content on their YouTube anymore. So instead of creating a different channel for each group, we've joined up with them, and Chris McClellan gets a big shout out for me for doing that for us, making that possible. So it should be there in a couple of days.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Nicole, thank you for organizing the user group, and to all the other organizers, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Take care. Bye, everybody.